Hello, and welcome to One More Word Pod, presented by GSI Radio, presented by Salamander Cheese Pizza and Turnip Greens, which are awesome. I'm Marvin Williams, and that is Matthew Aloysius Octavius Ornthal Gerard Ron the Third to Happen the Fifth,
Hi.
the newly appointed winner, by the way, of the 34-Hour Fiance series, by the way. So I can't wait to see how that's going to work out.
Yes, 34-hour fiance. Yes, that's a short-run series coming to Lifetime this fall.
only in 4K. So happy Father's Day to everybody. We're recording this on Father's Day. And so happy Father's Day to you. Watching over my good girl, Olive. Hopefully she's been good this week.
She, for the most part, like when you have a puppy, it's kind of like I can equate my dog to Johnny Manziel. She's undersized, overvalued. I'm kidding. Olive is a wonderful puppy, but
I would definitely draft Olive long before I drafted that son of a rascal. I tell you that right now. So today was a very awesome day in another way. I got a chance to celebrate a actually in-person high school graduation.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. It was like, the school is a rebel here in Savannah, Georgia area. Calvary, my nephew neighbor, little brother Justin graduated along with his buddies today, class of 2020. Him and Elizabeth and Chelsea and Cole and Ryan, they all got a chance to get their diplomas, hang out, and have one last day together. So that was really great to see and share. As a matter of fact, we partied with them last night until about 3 o'clock in the morning because I got it like that.
Outpacing me, Doc. Outpacing me.
Yeah. Let's don't get crazy. But so it's great, and congratulations to those kids, man. It's with this perpetual off season going on and the challenges that are so many people are facing with not being able to see loved ones on birthdays or celebrate Father's Day, Mother's Day, face to face, all these graduations, school, just everything's a hot mess, man. I think we're really getting a chance to see just the quality of people who, no matter what the circumstances, they're greater than that. Mm-hmm. They're able to move forward. And, these kids embody that, man. They got shut down right in the middle of the last part of their senior year, and they all kept going. And I think it was 99% of them have already secured either full-fledged scholarships to colleges and whatnot. And it was really cool to see. Really cool to see. Great group of great group of kids, man. Great group of kids. So Justin, Chelsea, Elizabeth, Cole, and Ryan, good job, kids. Now let's get the next one. On to Cincinnati. That's right. On to I'm not going to be Alabama head coach. So speaking of Alabama, information has a speed, right? Something happens somewhere in the known or unknown universe, and then in some manner, some form or fashion, that event and the happenings around that event kind of get pushed out. People become aware, people become knowledgeable of it. Some people don't care about it. Some people care very much about it. Some people care too much about it. And that shapes how we discuss it, right? That shapes how we talk about the way certain things might have formed, maybe the certain reasons certain things declined. So very rarely when we look in history do we see moments where, I can honestly say this moment was given to us by these series of events, and then they ended because of these series of events. With baseball, we're living in one of those moments, in my opinion. We have seen, and we've said it week after week after week after week, as this is show 9,344 or 7.
I believe it's 9.
Okay, so 9. I was close. So close. We've said it week after week after week after week after week, in some form of hope that there would be an effective baseball season, right? And we talked about how them treating the fans the way they're treating the fans and handling their business the way they're handling their business are going to run off a bunch of people again. And the segment you did on like in my pop-in-law, man, with his memories of failures of teams who and his words abandoned. He doesn't say that a lot, but when you feel like your team abandoned you, that's pretty heavy. And to have more than one on multiple occasions from multiple cities, that's
multiple
hard.
Sports.
Bingo, exactly. So, we look at the way baseball is handling their business now, and their demise is of their own accord. And we're going to come back to that in a little bit. But, okay, so baseball, so many of North American sports in an odd way are sort of tied to baseball, including hockey. We talk about the Negro Leagues, and there's a great book that we keep pushing on the show, when only the ball was white, and just what happened with that league, okay, so this is going to come back to information, so just hang on for 1 second. So that particular book, printed, forgot the year, so GSI fact check us on that one, all right? That particular book is one of the few books that sort of chronicles from a docu-series kind of way the origins, the path, the demise of the Negro League. Everything else is sort of a romanticized story of following a player, this, that, and the other. But that book is the only one that I've read so far that sort of gives us this encapsulated view of, if you want to know what it was like to be a player in the Negro League when white players who couldn't make it in the major leagues would come over, whether it's the Federal League, the American League, or National League. They would say they were black so they can get a chance to play in the Negro League. And in some cases, much like what mirrored the jazz musicians of the time, a lot of white musicians wanted to break as jazz musicians or blues musicians would claim sort of black heritage in order to work in that particular genre, to the case of, as we know, it documented, a few musicians were actually lynched because they were on the wrong side of the bus, so to speak, whenever they went through, certain states like Alabama, Mississippi, or whatnot. And I'm sure the same thing has happened to some of the athletes who did the same thing. And so that book is one of those cases where you would think that there would be dozens, if not hundreds of other books, right? No, that information gathered from that event happened, discussed, and almost in a sort of, I won't say in a epistemological kind of way, but in a weird sort of vibe, just kind of was discarded, right? It's like, okay, yeah, we talked about it. Yeah, it was what it was. We got Jackie Robinson. You're welcome. Move on.
It is very interesting to me, and I've watched Ken Burns' baseball an ungodly amount of times in my life, and it did break down the significance of the Negro League. And if you are a baseball fan and you don't know the encompassing history of the game, it is over nearly 2 centuries worth of information. When you look at the evolution of professional baseball, it's weird that it runs through Hudson County, New Jersey, when you look at Hoboken and Newark. And Newark was a hub for the Negro Leagues. I believe their offices were Newark, Chicago. Those were the hotbeds. Obviously, New York and parts of the South. But
Edna Watney, right?
The
owner of the Newark Bears.
Mm-hmm.
Was a prominent Negro League owner and was right there, and you're right. You think of these cities like, I wonder how many football fans think of Cooperstown. I'm sorry, Lord, I said Cooperstown. I sure didn't I? Canton, Ohio, right? When you think of football mega centers, yeah, the Hall of Fame was in Canton, but a lot of people don't even know why.
Oh, that was where the National Football League was created. Well, It wasn't named the NFL at that point, but what became the NFL was made in a automobile distribution, a car dealership in Canton, Ohio.
So the story that's missing from this for me before we come back to our whole idea of information, where this is going, is the barnstorming Negro Football League, and there being such limited information about that. There are stories here and there, but such limited information about that, right? So okay, so now flashback, baseball history tied in, the information around baseball, its birth, its tied, the like you said, the whole thing with the Negro Leagues. Negro Leagues, the first league to play night games, the first league to go to Japan. They went to Japan 10 years before Major League Baseball did. They were the first to have free agency. They were the first to have all these other things. So Negro League first. But again, information discarded, moved away. In above the United States, in that state where the Canadians live, or the country where the Canadians live, there was baseball. And out of that baseball league, the Negro Baseball League of Canada, or the Colored Baseball League of Canada, came the Negro Hockey League. And here is a league born, it's credited to 1895.
Wow, that is older than the National Hockey League.
Exactly, because National Hockey League
by 12 years.
Exactly, because National Hockey League is credited to what, 1915 or 1917? I know
1917.
Right. Okay. So you have the Colored Hockey League of Canada, started by four guys who, it was started as an intellectual league. When you think of hockey, you don't exactly think of intellectuals, right? But these four guys, one was the very first lawyer to graduate from a major university in Canada. I was the very first black lawyer to graduate from a major university in Canada. Another was the very first black to even graduate from a major university in Canada. One was a pastor, and the other started the Pan-African Association. So you had these four guys living around the same area. They played baseball, but in the winter season, which I thought was 14 months out of the year up in Canada, they wanted to do hockey professionally. And they started out playing on ponds, and these four guys basically turned two of the baseball teams, and please GSI fact check us on this. Two of the baseball teams, the Amherst Royals was one of them, was actually a baseball team and a colored hockey team, as they call it. I'm using their terminology or verbiage, so just roll with us on this, okay? But you had the Africville Seasides, the Truro Victorias, the Charlotte West End Rangers, the Amherst Royals, the Hammond Plain Massbacks, and they played in a Challenge Cup style series, kind of like what boxing used to be. So for those of you who probably know the history of boxing, you'd have one champion, like with golf. You'd have one champion, and the Open Championship, where it comes from the Royal and Ancient Club in England. You'd have one champion every year. They're the Open champion, they're the boxing champion, or whatever weight division. And then what would happen for the following year, they would have sort of a series of events of people trying to box and move up in the rankings for a chance to challenge the current champion to become the champion for that year. And so that's the model that they did their whole league around. They only had 8 weeks because they only played from January to March. So, but they initially played on ponds. They got so successful, not only financially but socially, that they were able to get space in ice arenas. So, at a time when the NHL is not born yet, at a time when we don't have hockey as a primary professional sports, I'll say it that way, in North America, you have the Negro Hockey League in Canada, with these athletes drawing sometimes over 1,200 people a night.
Oh, 2 Trump rallies, nice.
Ooh, low blow. Bam, gotcha. 1,200 people a night to watch their matches. So, and the rule book was the Bible. The whole rule about it was in so there's a book, one of the few books that I can honestly say that I've made the mistake of letting get away from me, and this is going to come back to where we were talking about information. Book is called Black Ice. I'm make sure I'm reading this correctly. Black Ice: The Lost History of the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes from 1895 to 1925, and it's written by George and Daryl Frosty. And I would take a lot of trips to Nova Scotia. I believe you were a student of mine when I was finishing up the second master's before I started the doctoral program, and I was going to Canada like 3 times a year because I was doing I did a master's thesis on the Cajun language, and the only library that had the original Acadian language that became the Cajun language was in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So I would go there. So I would go there like 2 or 3 times a year, get a chance. And it was this really cool thing. I had to go to the basement of the Dalhousie Library and then the Nova Scotian National Library, go in the basement because these documents were super old. You couldn't use regular UV light or any regular light. You had to read by candlelight. So I felt like a real scholar. Had to handwrite everything in notes. The curator had to approve everything that I took notes of and bring out because, as you know, the French are very protective very protective of their language. So it was a great academic experience for me. But in going there, I saw this book, and I bought the book. I bought 3 copies of the book, and I bought the 3 copies of the book, and they were like $10 each, if that. You can't find those books now for hardly less than $100.
You can buy, I'm looking at it right now on Amazon.com.
Right,
And you can buy the Kindle version for $5.
Right.
And then there's a hardcover and a paperback version.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, they're like double digits or close to $100 each or somewhere in there.
The hardcover, if you want to buy a new edition, it's $345.69. You could buy a used copy for as low as $86.79. The paperback is $73.92.
So
as cheap as $50.
So here we go. Information has a speed. Here's a story and the reason I'm bringing it up is this past weekend was the celebration of Juneteenth. And on Twitter, someone brought up the Colored Hockey League of Canada. And I saw all these posts, and many of them from people who are beyond respect in terms of sports journalism and sports knowledge and sports commentary, who all tweeted almost the exact same message. I had no idea this existed. And what I've learned, and Matthew would tell you when he was my student in class, I always made an assumption that if I knew something, everyone else knew it. And sometimes they had to raise their hand and go, Professor, no, we don't know what Roman numerals are, or whatever. So
I feel like that was someone in my class.
Exactly. It was your class. And I remember the day and I remember the person where they sat in class, back right corner, and he slept most of the time.
But so, just a quick sidebar, Marvin and I have known each other for 11 years at this point. And
actually known each other for nearly almost 13, because you were my student for almost a year before we started the radio show.
That's true. Yeah, 2007. Marvin was a professor of mine at Kingsborough Community College, and we had I forget the exact name of the class, because
Introduction to Mass Communication.
That's Introduction to Mass Communications, and I was a broadcasting nerd way before I even got into the school, so I was kind of playing with a loaded deck when I went into that classroom. And for the final paper, I wrote somewhere in the range of 40 to 45 pages, while other people wrote maybe 10 and a half, if that.
Maybe and when he says 10 and a half, he means 10 and a half sentences. Because that's right, because it was a writing center class. I forgot you were in that first group of students who had to take the writing across the curriculum, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and so I'm gonna brag on Matthew a little bit. I would always bring cultural elements to every single course, like, as I learned very quickly as a professor there. There were a lot of students who never left Brooklyn, never left the borough of Brooklyn. So even talking about Manhattan sometimes, where it was like talking about going to Europe because they had never ever taken a train through Manhattan. So I would always ask, what do certain words mean, to see if there was a connection in class. And Matthew was the very first student who I asked. I made a comment about a wicked googly. You remember that? And that was always one that, if they knew anything else, I knew if I asked that question, the classroom brains would just snap in half. And Matthew said, "Oh, that's from cricket, right?" Like, exactly, because cricket is my second favorite sport next to curling. So you 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 that I knew right then and there, from that day of that class. I said, you know what? I need to follow this guy. He's definitely got something going on for him between the ears. So either that, I have to report him to Homeland Security. So, but the idea, there you go. But so, once again, why would that book now be that much? We should just print more copies of it, right? Mm-hmm. That information should be out there, right? Information has a speed. We want to share it. These are things people want to know about. But all of a sudden, this book, hard to get to. Another book, similar history. And trust me, we're coming back to sports, so hang with us one more second here on One More Word Pod. Another book, Blue Coats, Black Skin, about the New York Police Department from 1895 to, I think it's like the mid 50s. And the reason that book is important, and now you can actually get copies of that book, which a long time it was treated like black ice. You can find it anywhere. And the only reason we actually had a copy of it is my better, smarter half, who we named She Who Is Brilliant and Beautiful, her great-great-grandfather was the very first black police officer in New York City. Moses P. Cobb is her great-great-great-grandfather, and he was the very first cop and very first black NYPD officer, and her great uncle Samuel Battle was the very first one, I think, in Brooklyn, or I might have them backwards, but one was the very first one in New York, and one was the second one, but the first one in one of the other boroughs. So they had a copy of the book because the gentleman who wrote that particular book, James Alexander, made sure the family got a copy of the book when he first published it. But then you couldn't find that book anywhere. Information has a speed. Something happens, an event happens, things around that event happen, people then find out about it, then people get excited about it, some people don't care about it, some people get too excited about it, they share it, they move it forward, right? But why we're talking about that now is coming around Juneteenth, and all the events that happen on Juneteenth, many of them tragic, some of them amazing. And I was reading those tweets of these people, and I realized, unless this information is kept alive, we will lose it. And when I saw how many people did not even know about the Negro Hockey League of Canada, it really shocked me, because a lot of them were hockey people. And the fact that it was born out of baseball, the fact that it was the first league to allow the goalie to use their feet to block shots. It was the first league to allow the goalie to actually stop the clock when they stifled a stymied a shot, and they put their glove on it, and every power play had to stop until they, reset the puck again and drop the puck again. First league to have a slap shot, and that was attributed to Edward Martin. He had the shot. I forgot exactly how it was worded in the book, which makes me angry, because those 3 copies of the book have all gotten away from me. Like, I remember letting one person borrow one copy, and I said borrow because it was the last one I had left, and I never saw it again. And so, yeah, I know, right? And I should learn from Adama: never let people borrow books, and never let Jason Bourne borrow your car. So,
on top of that, like, most of the things in my Amazon wish list are books. Mm-hmm. And they're all sports books. And I'm taking a look at certain things about the World Football League, because one of the things I find
Right.
very interesting are these other leagues, whether they're football leagues, baseball, basketball, hockey, what have you. Like, there's one about the World Football League that is $45. And there's two others about the World Football League that are about $25 each. A book about the 1963 San Diego Chargers, which is $40 for whatever reason.
Go Superchargers. I'm sorry. I just you have greatest theme song in the history of sports.
But you look at history now, as you said, information has a speed, and now we can get as much current information as humanly possible for free with the push of a button on a phone or typing something into your computer. But history, especially deeply researched history, is summarily commoditized, and it's out of the reach for many people. Like, I was lucky to go. Kingsborough's library had a very weirdly deep library. Yeah. Hofstra University, New York University, the other two places where I went to school, two of the best universities in the Northeast and in North America, they had tremendous libraries where I could write many of my papers about sports and media culture, which has, been my primary focus. But then the other things, like if I wanted a copy of this book from my library, or like you're searching for things, I've been lucky enough to get great pieces of sports history because of this show, because I've been able to request stuff from publishers, and we're going to have interviews really soon thanks to our friends at University of Nebraska Press. We'll have some great books for you coming up in the fall. But yeah, it sucks because I would love to read that book. This is the first time I'm hearing about that book. So I'd love to sit down and give that a read, but it's possible when the cheapest copy you can get is $50.
And to move past that, and you aced on with where I was going with this. So we get some information at a push of a button. And sometimes that information is presented in the guise of history. Sometimes that information is even presented in the guise of information, because it might not necessarily be true, or might not necessarily even be correct. And here's where we suffer, those who are willing to dig with this information. Because I did, Matthew's teaching me a lot of stuff. Like, he tells me, you can search for stuff on your phone. You don't have to get your laptop out. Go sit in the studio and sit at the laptop, which is a big step from the desktop. Sit at the laptop and type in stuff and go and then raid every list. And one of the things I remember teaching the writing class I worked with was, I don't care if you go to Wikipedia. Just understand Wikipedia is not a source. Go to the sources where they got the information for the Wikipedia article. So again, information at a speed. When we see something, we and like I said, Matthew's teaching me, he says, Marvin, you can take your phone, you can open up Chrome, and you can actually search stuff on your phone without having to get out of bed, go to your studio, type in the computer, write it down on a sheet of paper. You can actually save stuff, like, screenshot. So he's teaching me how to be a fan and also how to use my phone to search information. But what I find so amazing is, like, I will do that. And I'll see something, I go, I know this isn't right. Like, I, go through Wikipedia, I go through wherever, and I see something, and I would say, okay, I know this isn't right. I know this information is not correct. So then what I do is I then go start searching other spots, and then the researcher me comes out. And then I start looking for books that I know I've read, and the thousands and thousands of books that I know I've read. And okay, I'm looking for this particular book, and I can't find it. And I know it's a real book. I'm looking at it on my bookshelf. I'm like, okay, I know this is a real book. I'm searching for the book, can't find it. Wow, or look, So I started really putting stuff together, and I think of all those classes. Unfortunately, Matthew was in a lot of them, that I would find myself going apoplectic at the classroom, because when I would ask a question, I would get this flat answer, and I would think to myself, they really think everything is available on the internet, and it's not. A lot of things are. It's a great guide. It's a great whatever it is, but it's not everything is there. And at a certain point, and trust me, fan base, I get it. At a certain point, I need to get what I need to get. I need to know what I need to know, because I need to move on. That's fine. That's cool. If that's where you choose to be, enjoy. However, don't propose half placed bits of information as absolutisms or even the information that they're supposed to represent, which brings us back, and then we're gonna tie it in with this. The Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes disappeared from the face of the planet. And by that I mean this. They went from being so popular, nearly 1,500 people, 12 to 1,500 people in ice rinks, to stories written about their athletes, story written about their games, story written about their matches. The idea of who was actually the true champion became sports and social debates of the day. This is pre-blacks having the right to vote. This is pre-women having the right to vote. This is pre-civil rights. This is pre-Jackie Robinson. This is pre all these other events, right? But yet and still, they were so valuable in the social structure of communication and discourse that there were entire columns and leagues and spots of magazines dedicated to the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes. And then one thing happened. The provincial and area leaders of Halifax wanted to approve a railroad to go through what was the primary area that was owned and run by the colored hockey teams, the black hockey teams. And they fought the annexation of their land. So in fighting this, it became not just litigious, but it became political and litigious. Now, despite what power we thought that league might have had because of their popularity, here's how the actual leaders of that area, none of whom were black, by the way, fought back. They went to all of the area newspapers, all of the area magazines, and they said, you don't write any stories about them. So they went from being heralded year round, 12 months out of the year. Remember, they only played 8 weeks, but they were talked about and discussed year round, to all of a sudden, in the course of 1 year, one article was printed. What do we say? Out of sight, out of mind. A lot of people thought because of that, the league didn't exist anymore. Though the four founders, Mr. Borden, Kenny, Johnson, and Williams, the four gentlemen who founded the league, and oh, by the way, James Johnston, the first lawyer, the first black lawyer, the graduate from Dalhousie Law School, he was representing the families who didn't want their land, the black families who didn't want their land annexed. So he's tied into it twice. He's tied into it from the legal side because he's representing the families that don't want their land annexed, and he is one of the starters, owners, and proprietors of the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes. So they stopped printing any articles about them. So now there's no information. Now they're out of sight information-wise. One article in 1 year, from being heralded for 12 months out of the year to now one article in 1 year. And I think that article was about the championship match, which means basically the season was over when that one article came out. Then the rinks that were also owned by whites stopped renting them the rinks, regardless of how much money they made the rinks, because they were the only events that would sell out the rinks. The white owners stopped allowing them the opportunity to rent their rinks to perform, so they had to move back to the pond. Other events forced them to move back to the pond during the warmer part of their 8-week season. So that means the ice was not always fully formed. It wasn't safe to play. It was oftentimes slushy. It really changed the game. And because of that, the league is now on life support. They had a slight resurgence that happened in 1921, I believe. But what do we have in 1921? Fully formed and fully going in the country that's right beneath Canada,
Mm-hmm.
the National Hockey League.
And even then, you saw the teams rise up, and over that period of time, hockey in Canada, organized hockey in Canada and in the United States, was on the rise during the early portion of because the Stanley Cup dates back to the 1800s,
right?
And it dates back to before the National Hockey League was formed. And,
Exactly.
There's been a lot of in-depth detail, some things that I've actually been able to help curate during my time working for the NHL. You look all the way back. I think I found the oldest newsreel footage of a Stanley Cup final. It was between the Rangers and the Leafs, and I want to say 1923.
Awesome.
But the way that sports history, and I don't mean to cut you off, but the way sports history has been kind of developed is the same way that we view, and ties it all in, American history, European history.
Mm-hmm.
Just the history is taught by the winners. The winners are the ones who can dictate how history is developed. Like if you watch the true story of the AFL,
yeah,
the only reason those things were kept in check is because the owners of the AFL teams still, for the most part, owned teams in the National Football League, and Al Davis is not going to play around. And there's so much archival footage about that, because everything post 1960, you could get alternate sides of the story depending upon what it is. When it comes to the World Football League, you're not getting that. When it comes to the USFL, you're definitely getting it, because the amazing 30 for 30 done by someone who was actually on the USFL production side, who was able to take a look at the view from all ways round. Sadly, John Bassett was one of the few people that was not interviewed for it. The current president of the United States was interviewed for it because he killed the league. Never forget that he killed the football league, folks.
With Herschel Walker in it.
Yeah. I don't know how you pull that off. But when you look at the Color Hockey League of Nova Scotia, or you look at those like the AAFC, or these other pre-television era leagues, there's so much history there. There's so much knowledge there. There's so many things just about, because a lot of people rag on the XFL, both versions of the XFL. And yeah, there's a lot of faults with the XFL, but when you take a look at the innovations that the XFL brought, whether it's in production or in terms of rule changes or how they tried to develop an alternative part of the game, those end up being acclimated by the National Football League.
Exactly, because it works, it's popular, people are interested, they talk about it, it becomes part of the information that we keep. And not only do we keep, we start to implement and start to use. Why? Because it becomes accepted. So, and your point about the leagues, before there was a WNBA, by the way, there was the ABL, and there's I think, and I'm just going to just be totally selfish and transparent about this, one of the best sports league documentaries I've ever seen is about the ABL. It's called Breaking the Glass. It's the history of the ABL pre-WNBA and how the WNBA kind of choked out that particular league. And when you look at it, you start to realize, wait a minute, this isn't from 1940, 1950. This is actually from, the 1980s and 1990s, where these ladies played a full, complete 60 to 80 game season. They had insurance the entire year round. They had maternity leave. They had sponsorship. They had all. They were able to play in the United States without having to go to Europe and play, and make really decent money. And then the WNBA comes along where you only have insurance during the season. You don't get maternity. And now it's different. Now they're getting paid, I think, throughout the year. They have insurance throughout the year, things like that. But now their season is only 30-something games, which basically expanded college season, unless it was before. So, again, information has a speed. Who cares about it? Who keeps it, right? So here it is, this hockey league. Now, out of sight, out of mind, they try to come back. We have the NHL. Now, why were any of these teams not allowed to play for the Stanley Cup? Well, in Canada, much like the United States, teams, sports leagues were not integrated, and they were not allowed to have that opportunity. And that hits home to me. And I was going to wait till I actually got my hands on this picture. I have a picture of one of the first national championship basketball women's basketball teams. It's the team. It's Tennessee State University women's basketball team. They're all black. The point guard was my paternal grandmother, Leola G. Williams. She was the point guard for that team. I saw the picture and went, I've seen this picture before. My aunt says, yes, that's your grandmother. That's her basketball. Wait a minute. She said, oh, yeah, they won some sort of championship that year. I'm like, no, that is a national championship. Because it was between Tennessee State and Delta State, led by Margaret Wade. And that's why that history stuck out in my head, like so much of like, and I was like, wait, my grandmother was what? Yeah, she was a point guard. Like, no way. It's like one of these, I wish grandma was here. I could ask her about this stuff.
I swore she was a two guard.
Yeah, look, wait, if you ever met Leola, she's a one guard, trust me. There's a reason Morgan Freeman always says she kicked my butt every time she made me go to class. So, but this idea of this information of what we just shared over the course of basically 40 minutes about this league, hopefully it will spur your interest to go out and sort of find this stuff, and that's what we try to do here on One More Word Pod. And we thank you for taking the time to listen to us, and however you listen to us, man, it means the world. However, the reason that we're talking about that this week, outside of it being around Juneteenth, and we're going to do more of this, is Major League Baseball, they do not have a challenging league. And Matthew brought up the whole idea of barnstorming and the other thing like that could be done in order to sort of give baseball some competition. However, there's one mega issue with baseball that they have painted themselves into a corner, surrounded themselves with Semtex, and then just put in a whole bunch of blasting caps. They have monopolized a market that they constantly try to flush down the toilet. And not having an agreement now, I'm hearing, because I listen to sports outlets across the country. That's the one beautiful thing about satellite radio. I can listen to New York radio. I can listen to West Coast radio. I can listen to everything in between, satellite, internet, the whole nine. And I have, stations in a lot of markets that I'll listen to a podcast of a show, listen to the show itself, and do my research with who's talking about what. And one of the things that I'm starting to hear once now that a lot of the radio voices that I trust have now moved away from anger, like the fans that I hear talking, people on the regular streets, people down at the Five Guys burger place or whatever, they're moving to disinterest. And they're saying those words, a league, a team, never want to hear say it. I don't care. I don't care that you're talking. I don't care that you're trying to talk. I don't care that you have an agreement. I don't care that you're trying to find an agreement. Until I see you on the field, I don't care. Information has a speed. Information has a place. People care about what they know about. People care about what they learn about. Some people care too much. Some people don't care at all. And when people stop caring, this is what you're going to get. And this event, as horrible as it is, has done more damage to baseball. And I think that they're not going to feel it until it's way too late than even the strike season. Because now, not only have they abandoned their people and their fans, they have shown a complete lack of regard, a lack of empathy for the people who want that sport back to have the escape, have the getaway, have the something the same. And oh, by the way, full disclosure, dollars to donuts. I'm willing to bet you that a lot of people understand the dangers of trying to go back out on the field and play again, and what it could mean if a player contracts the virus or their spouse contracts the virus and other things that can go wrong. People are not unsympathetic to that. They're not unaware to that, nor do I believe that they're uncaring about that, because they want safety. They want safety for everybody. However, the process by which they're making this discussion not about safety, but about money. And the team's talking about, well, if we play these many games, we're going to lose this much more money. And they're saying that to a fan, right, who is holding season tickets that they took out a loan for. That loan didn't the payment for that loan didn't stop. The payment for those PSLs didn't stop. All those other things, they didn't stop. So here's a person working I'm going to say 9 to 5, but we know 9 to 5 is not 9 to 5. For some people, it's 4 to 12, and then an hour break, and then another job from 1 to 9, or whatever. It is people working 1, 2, 3, 4 jobs. Their only escape is when they're able to go in, sit in that chair, wear that jersey, buy that expensive hot dog, buy that expensive beer or soda, and cheer on their team. And then to look on their phone and follow along on the app to say, okay, this is what my guys doing. Oh man, I gotta, man, my guys got about to get 40-40. To talk about that when they're at work, to escape the mundane, to escape the trivial. This is what they have, and this is what they look forward to. And that's not being thought about, being cared for, being curated. And again, I'll say it. We said it 4 weeks ago. They have those commercials about how much we care about the people. We care about you. We love our fans. We blah, blah, blah. But you don't show it. And now people don't trust you. Now people don't care. And unlike the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes, who were forced out by silence, this league is silencing themselves in the most obvious, uncaring way possible. So they might not get 1,200 people to come out to the game. Well, in Florida, only 25 people come out anyway. 17 of them work there. Yeah, 17 of them work there. So this is not going to end well, no matter what they think is going on.
And we've talked about it. We talked about it last week. We've talked about it in weeks prior when it comes to baseball. The commoditization of the sport has really hurt it with a lot of fans. Like, I can go to a Met game for $10, but I'm spending $30 to $50 to maybe $80 just to enjoy myself at the game. If I'm going to a night game, or if I'm going to a day game, on the rare occasions I decide I want to get burned. The ballparks are now great malls where you spend a decent chunk of the game just walking around trying to find a good place to eat. The beer garden at Citi Field is amazing, by the way. It's a nice little rooftop area.
I'll make a note now.
I think I got a 4 on Zagat's. I'm not sure. But we've been talking about this, it feels like, since the show started. And we started this show when it was still Shea Stadium in the original Yankee Stadium, or in and around when they started making the transition. We look at these ballparks for memories of our childhood, and now the only thing we talk about when it comes to baseball stadiums is how much these things cost.
Right.
And the game experience is lost, and you see a lot of the sustaining experiences at minor league parks, and we've talked about that on the show too. But they're doing that for pure survival. If you go to a minor league baseball game, you're supporting ostensibly a small business. Now, in New York, obviously they're owned by the Yankees and the Mets, but they're not making the same amount of money, and their ticket prices are built for families to pack the place. Like, their concession prices are significantly cheaper than their major league affiliates, and it should be. But if baseball wants to put the right foot forward to try and save the game, outside of, complete overhaul of how they are promoting the game, how they're running the league, abolish the idea of only one DH, I think that they should. There's a lot of different things I would do if I was a commissioner of baseball. A lot of them wouldn't happen, but I've got ideas. And the biggest thing is that the ballparks, the teams are making a ton of money from when you step onto the property to when you step off the property. And That's why ticket prices in there could be so low. A lot of football stadiums are following suit. Obviously, for basketball stadiums, they're doing the same thing. But for football, there's only eight events a year there, at minimum. Basketball arenas, some of them have hockey, so they're getting, outside of concerts, maybe 60 events a year.
Okay, so let's say there's
80?
41 home basketball games, not counting playoffs. In hockey, there'll be another 40, 41.
So you're getting
so that's 80
to 87 maybe.
Right.
Games a year.
Right.
So it's understandable that those prices are, between both teams, it's 40 to 41 each at minimum. Baseball, you're getting 82. Or 81, pardon me. 81 no matter what.
Right.
And the way baseball can take a step forward, aside from lowering ticket prices, because a lot of these stadiums now are barren. If you watch a lot of teams in the MLB, it's been a slow decline for a lot of teams that aren't just Florida. A lot of people don't care between April and June. No one cares. After the All-Star break is when people start caring again. And I think that's a thing that hurts baseball, is the season's too long.
Right. There's no other sport we say that about.
Yeah.
There is no other sport where that conversation even. No. Who says the NFL season is too long?
Not me.
Yeah. Right.
They're adding games.
Even the NBA.
Yeah.
Even the NBA with 80 games. Right. 82.
82 games.
No one's saying it's hockey. No one says that. But when it comes to baseball, yeah, season's too long. And these are from fans.
Yeah, I love baseball, but I'm not watching 162 games a year. I got things to do. I got dogs to walk. I got, things to write. It's insane.
And oh, by the way, okay, so what now? What was the average time of a baseball game last year? It was like 3 hours and...
Yeah, and it was down from the year before.
Exactly. So the game itself is 3 hours. Let's say you want to go to the game. That you're talking at least, 1.5 to 2 hours before the game. Mm-hmm. If you want to get there, get parking, be there for first pitch.
Go through security, all that stuff. Right. You want to eat and get your beer before the first pitch.
Body cavity search, the whole nine. And then to get out of, let's say you stay till last pitch, last out. Okay, so now to get home from the game, that's another hour and a half? If
you're in New York, yeah, because if you're taking the train, if you don't live in that borough, you're going through Manhattan. Mm-hmm. You have to catch at least 2 trains to get.
So one baseball game.
Yeah.
We just conservatively tacked on to a person's day for one baseball game 7 hours, and we're being conservative. I think we're being very conservative. So, time. Why do you think we always thank you for listening to us, and we say the one thing we know you can never get back is your time? Because that is so valuable now more than ever. So, that commitment, and you said it beautifully. Go to the mall, find something decent to eat, so you can survive the game without having to stay in the bathroom, right? All these other things that go on. Dude, this is what you're asking. And oh, by the way, for the person who's just giving you that 7 to 8 hours of that day, where they're probably either coming from work or having to go to work afterwards to pay for those tickets to keep supporting you, this is how you treat them. Mm-hmm. Really?
And you're doing it during the height of summer. Baseball is lucky because they have the months of July and August to themselves.
Right.
Like, that's the only time of the year when no other sport is competing against them. But baseball, like, it's going into November. Since 2001, the World Series has ended in early November.
Mm-hmm. And they're getting smashed by the NFL.
Yeah, and then they have the NBA and the NHL that they're competing against. And the NBA has supplanted Major League Baseball as the second biggest sport in the United States. Yep. And baseball's been doing a disservice to its fans for what feels like 30 years. Yeah.
I cannot argue the opposite point. I would try, but I would fail. The the idea, leagues that fight for survival, the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes, the ABL, the Women's Professional Basketball League, the World Football League, the leagues that legitimately fight for survival need help by the machine now more than ever, because going back to even, and okay, so since the advent of television, right? What was it? 1940, no one, barely anyone knew what a television was, or 1940, whatever it is. And by 1945, there's nearly 100,000 televisions being made a week or something like that. And by 1955, there are more televisions than people in the country. Think about this. So now you have this other thing to draw you away from radio, but also to draw your attention and give you all these other things. You don't have to go anywhere anymore. I can now get my experience right here because I have that box with all the little people inside. So multiply that by a drazillion, and that's what you got now, because guess what? I can watch TV here, movies here, podcasts here, listen, my music is here, my workout is here, my everything is here. And oh, by the way, I got this computer here, I got the TV on the wall, I got options. So what are you going to do to take away from me the one thing I can't get back? I'm willing to give you my money if I want to. But I'm not always willing to give you my time.
And the thing about sports is that it's a cultural tradition. Sports is, whether you like it or not, a cultural tradition. The reason why a lot of people love sports, and primarily different sports teams and leagues, is because of an inciting incident when they were a child, or something around them culturally growing up that gave them that identifier. That's why a lot of kids who grew up in the 70s and 80s were Cowboys fans, Steelers fans, Raiders fans. That's why those fandoms continue to grow and are national brands. Same thing with the Yankees. The Yankees during every decade but the 60s were the most dominant team, or one of the most dominant brands in sports. And a lot of kids that grew up with me, of my generation, who grew up during the 96, 98, 2000 Yankees that were just unstoppable.
Right.
That's why they're Yankees fans. And now more and more, less people are caring about baseball because the game is forcing them away. You're seeing it with, like, the Washington Nationals. Nationals fan base exploded over the past few years.
Right.
And really generated the same kind of love and respect and passion that the Expos had in Montreal. Mm-hmm. But we saw how quickly a fan base can be completely disintegrated because of poor ownership, poor development, poor understanding of the market. And we're seeing that with a lot of baseball teams and just the league in general. Heading back to 2002 with the All-Star Game, we brought this up last week. That forced a lot of people to reevaluate their love and passion of the game. The All-Star Game, which for whatever reason is a high cultural watermark for baseball fans, now for those who love baseball, they hate the All-Star Game.
Well, think about it. All-Star Game was the one time that you got a chance to see the best players from both leagues, because it's pre-interleague, right? Mm-hmm. So you got a chance to see the best players from the American League and the best players from the National League. You saw them together in the same field. You saw, and there was the guy from your team, because it used to had to be somebody from every team. So there's always that. At least if you had a horrible team, you at least had one representative from your team that you couldn't wait to see go out there and do the thing. But now with the advent of interleague play, the Yankees play the Braves all the time. The Cleveland Indians play the Chicago Cubs all the time. That magic is now gone. So, the interest of the best from this league, the best from this league, kind of got a kick in the knee. And then you go forward, and with all this, now the World Series, like, okay, best team maybe. And again, doing it to yourself, because when you're out of sight, you're out of mind. Information has a speed. When people stop caring, when they say those three words, I don't care, you are dead in the water. You're dead stick in the water. And so hopefully they figure it out, they don't figure it out, whatever. But it seems like, a lot of people are yelling into the wind now because when those things happen, they happen. We thank you all for taking the time to listen to us. We're gonna leave you today with a positive name again. So it won't be somebody from that list, it'll be somebody from a good list. Talking about hockey. We're gonna talk about Mr. Willie O'Ree, first black player in the NHL. He would come to Kingsborough a lot, and you can YouTube his last few interviews that did on Kingsborough's campus for one of our college programs, and to hear his voice about being that player in that league at that time. He comes into the league at a time where the Color League of the Maritimes is now pretty much gone. The NHL is the original six are starting to expand. He was I think he was a forward for the Boston Bruins. So I think his first number was 22, and then he had to take 25 because he took another player who wanted 22. So he didn't even though he had seniority, he wasn't even allowed to keep his number. So I have a 22 and a 25 jersey with his name on the back just because I had to. But to hear this cat talk about that time, please, we won't do it justice here, but the idea of and Matt, can you fact check me real quick on terms of when he first played in the league? He did it at a time when you talk about a sport again expanded. The NHL is expanding, and when you look at those retro films of the NHL, and you realize, okay, there were 6 teams or 7 teams or 9 teams. Every arena is packed to overflow, right? I mean, pre-TV, pre-distraction, right? The energy it must have been in those places, because now I can get to I can afford to get to the game. I have the time to get to the game. I see the match. I enjoy the match or whatever. It is one can hope, and I think you nailed it on the head when you talked about minor league ball. I think minor league ball is the closest we have to that now, where, every team has to fight for their own and they do whatever they have to do for the fans to get them to come out and watch. So what is my year on Willie O'Ree, if you found it?
So O'Ree was a winger for the Bruins from 57 to 79.
Okay, there you go.
Well, he played 57 to 58 for the Bruins. That was his only season. He played 2 seasons in the NHL, 57 through 58. Then played for the Springfield Indians, the Quebec Aces, and the Kingston Frontenacs before returning to the Bruins in 60 and 61. Then played for the EPHLs, the Hull Ottawa Canadiens, and then played in the WHL from 1961 to 1972 for the Los Angeles Blades and San Diego Gulls, before playing for the AHL and then returning to the WHL and the SoCal Senior League before ending in 1979 for the PHL San Diego Hawks.
Think about the length of that career in hockey, no concussion protocol, right? Think about what he just what he had to deal with, right? Think about what he had to deal with. Separate locker rooms in a lot of places. The challenge of even going to some of the cities. Oh my goodness! I just so again, we won't do injustice to his story. YouTube Willie O'Ree interviews, and you can hear his story, and please do so, and let's make an effort together to keep this stuff alive, to keep this information in front of everybody, to make it not only just information, but a true part of history and its place and what it means for getting us where we are today. That's what we ask. That's our challenge to you. There you go. So that being said, we thank you all for taking the time to listen. We thank you all for just being there with us. I know we got some people who subscribed on YouTube apparently.
Yes.
I'm not saying not
New.
yeah, well, yeah, YouTube, yes, but iTunes, I think we have some. So you come, you bring us along. We're again, we always ask any information, anything you can give us, anything you want to hear us talk about. We're there for you. We're there. This is your show.
Yep.
And we thank you for trusting us to talk to you about this stuff. And we can't wait to hopefully see you all again soon. He's Matt Ryan. I'm Marvin Williams. And remember, no matter whatever you do, stay safe and never let Jason Bourne borrow your car.